the question that what is the impact of HR actions on business outcome and the cost and so on and so forth? Should we measure or allow HR to hide behind the softer aspect of it? And that's where people have started doing lobbying for this, and the measurement and various metrics have started coming in. And since then, today we are discussing HR analytics. I want to share some outline of this program, but before that, I want to ask you, how many of you think that we can still improve the scope or the work which we do currently in analytics under the HR function? Can you please raise the hands? So half of the people think that we can still improve, and half of think that we are done with HR analytics. That's a good news. How many of you think that HR analytics will help us to improve the HR positioning in business? Okay, fairly good number of people are telling. The next question I have is, how many of you think that other functions like sales, finance, operations do more analytics than HR? Okay. And my last question is, how many of you think that HR analytics and software aspect of HR can coexist? Can software aspect of HR and analytics can coexist? How many of you think? So congratulations, you are in the right panel discussion. Okay. So I would now invite my co-panel members. So Prabir, I would request you to give an overview. So each one of us, each of the panel member will give around 5 to 7 minutes of overview, what is their take on the subject. Then I will share with you 3 themes which we are going to pick up. And if we are missing something and if you want to know, of course, we will have the time to ask question and answer, and that time we can. And let me assure on the behalf of panel, they will still be available during the dinner time, and you can have consultation with them. So, Praveen, may I kindly request you to start?
Thank you, Alok. I think you've set the context very well, and I must compliment, I think you made a very good opening address, so it makes our jobs a lot easier. So, so my own take on HR analytics is, first, whose need is it? I think when we talk about a subject like this, the first question is it HR's need, or is it the need of people beyond HR as well? And I think HR itself has to get this cobweb a little cleared in our own hearts and minds. So that's the first comment I want to make. The second comment that I want to make is that there is one part which is about data sciences, the rigor, the instruments, the tool. The other is the issue of the culture of analytics. I will be honest, even in marketing, it is still work in progress. Maybe hardcore sales, manufacturing, it's much easier where there's only one way you can look at it. But I think qualitative research, qualitative analytics will always have that little blend. And I think somewhere as we go along, I would like to highlight that both the acceptance and the impact of HR analytics has a lot to do with the kind of leadership culture that an institution chooses to become. I refuse to believe that chief executives or boards are interested in analytics only to the extent it impacts hardcore sales, marketing, and so on, but they are not interested in that. I don't think that's the issue anymore. But this entire dimension of putting HR as one monolith stereotype is not correct. And I think the comment that Alok you mentioned, I tend to completely agree. There is the soft part, there is the hard part. The soft part, honestly, I've had my own interactions in my career at different points in time with different board members, and I believe I do not want to fight the battle of proving QED for every behavioral training program. I don't want to do it. Either we believe it makes a difference or it doesn't make a difference, because there is no point trying to force fit a mathematical exactness to something which is a philosophical answer. That's on one side. And having said that, there is a lot of HR today which lends itself and should lend itself to hardcore both causality, correlation, and finally business impact. And you talked about some of those dimensions in your address, and I'm not going to repeat that. But I think it is very important for HR to wear its larger role. And what is the larger role of HR? The larger role of HR is to finally influence the organization and its leadership from the board down to do what is right for organization, survival, readiness, growth. That's really their role. You may touch aspects and dimensions of organizations which are a little different than what maybe some other functions will do. If HR wants to play a role of influencing, the old established methods of relationship, credibility, humor, etc., all of that continues. I'm not taking that away. But I believe we will be taken more seriously if we can play facts back. And facts not in terms of our own perception of facts, but what the data suggests. And I think, therefore, it is not about mathematical exactness, but it's about the ability to draw and leverage insights from the people agenda that makes your ability to influence your organizations to an outcome that you feel is relevant and fair. I think that is the intent and purpose. So, for example, I'll give you a couple of, and this is an agenda every company is on its journey. So I don't think any one of us can claim that, we've cracked the piece. And I worked with very large companies, and I can tell you they are also struggling, and we are on a journey. The important thing is, how do you make the conversation become relevant? Because if you just go as a nice, fuzzy, warm, or possibly a VP HR argument, you're not likely to be taken seriously. So one of the examples that in one of my earlier companies that I worked with, it was a massive corporation. And I'll give you a small example. We were trying to change culture, which I believe was the biggest problem of that company. It was a very successful company, but the culture was rotten, to say the least. And one of the issues of that culture was it was a very controlled or controlling environment. So what was my larger purpose? My larger purpose was to unfreeze that environment. And I'll just give you one small example. If I had gone and said that I want to change some policies here and there, no one has the time to listen to that. So one small example. I thought we did which many, many companies don't do. And it was a very controlling culture, so remember that. And which was about empowering people to take decisions. It becomes speedier, you improve trust, you build ownership and all the different things, and therefore what happens to the culture, therefore what happens to large or long-term impact. Now, if I had just gone and said we should do it, it's a perspective. It is not that someone, that's your view. So what did I do? I looked at data of the last 5 years of that corporation. It's a massive corporation. How many managers turned down travel requests, and it has a huge number of people. How many managers turned down domestic travel requests in the last 5 years? What do you think the answer was? None. Zero. Now, with that insight, I said at the end of the day, we are actually following a ritual which wastes management time, managerial time, destroys trust, builds no empowerment, builds no ownership, all of which has hardcore dollar implications to the final outcome. It becomes easier. And I can keep thinking of many, many examples. My current organization, it's an 81-year-old company. And we were again wanting to change things in that organization because it has to be ready for the world which is here and the world which will come. Now, if I just again give a very fuzzy kind of a thing, we should improve things, no one is going to listen. So I did some data crunching. And I asked the board, I said, guess what's the average age of an employee in this company? And I deliberately reminded them it's an 80-year-old company. You see, the bias, cognitive bias, is 80-year-old company, so the average age must be? Alok, take a guess?
Around 40.
40. Alok is being nice, he says 40, they said 45. The average age is 30. Now, if you split the demographics further, the entire way you start readying the organization, responding to issues, redesigning the system will be very different than if it was a 45-year-old average age company. So I think you can mine whatever data as is relevant, and you made a very good point. There's a lot of data. The trick is which one do you pick which makes it relevant to the larger cause of success and sustainability of an organization. So I believe while there is one aspect of data sciences, its focus on HR and people, which I believe is happening, the other is really about leadership and culture. Is the leadership open about it? Sometimes, especially when it's counterintuitive to their own impressions, it's very tough. And HR, everyone believes, and in this room, in an, I think, HT session many years back, I did mention that from the doorman to the chairman, everyone believes they know HR. Now you present data, and if it's counterintuitive, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's possibly the best thing to do. And therefore, my premise at this stage will be, as we talk data analytics this evening, let's also remember the environment, the culture, the leadership practice, because without an appropriate enabling environment, we will continue to talk about it in sessions, but we are not going to get the mileage out of it.
So with your permission, I request Prahlad to. Sure. Prahlad, what's your take on this subject, and what would you like to?
Thank you, Alokji. So I will start from where you were, given. So analytics, basically, the moment we hear the word, so it gives us, it's a very heavy word. So when we start seeing a word from that perspective, this is very kind of difficult task we are going to do. Then we will not be able to do that. So the moment we will start thinking on a word, yes, this is very simple. So when we see that analytics as an art, so art is what? The world, how you see it, our perception. So how we are seeing. So analytics is basically, it is all about the data. So how we are seeing the data, the art of seeing, our perception. And the second part is when we see analytics as science, so how we do actually. So how we are doing, how we are dealing with the data. So one thing is, we all are in HR, we are, creating MISs, and the attrition analysis there is there, like you are having 8% or 10% or 12%, or someone is working in services, they are having